How about a bit of theory? Theory's a little bit's good. So you know the word dukkha is used in many ways. So it's used obviously in the Four Noble Truths. So you have the noble truth of suffering, dukkha, the noble truth of the cause, the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, and the noble truth of path. So Ariya Satya, dukkha, in that context. So that's one context. Another context is Vedana, which is basically pleasant and unpleasant. And that's a different context. Because you know that you can have a dukkha vedana, an unpleasant feeling, but not suffer, right? You know, I can feel a bit of sore in my leg, but not make it a problem. So it doesn't go into suffering, it's just unpleasant. So that's important to recognize, because sometimes we use that word in the wrong context, in different ways, right? And another way that we use it is dukkha lakkhana. And lakkhana means characteristic. And that's a very important way to remember how we use dukkha, because that comes in the triad of anicca, dukkha, anatta. And that triad is what we call the characteristics of experience. And so the characteristic of all experience is that it is Sankhata, it's constructed. So we have to look at the word sankhara. So a sankhara is something that is created through causes and conditions. Its existence is causally related. And it in itself also creates the conditions for other things to exist. So for example, this phone is Sankhata, it's constructed, it's compounded, it's a sankhara. It's a sankhara because it was manufactured, all kinds of elements went into its creation, it was purchased, all kinds of elements went into its purchasing, and it now functions as a recorder. So it's Sankhata, it's compounded, it's a sankhara. But also, it now creates the causes for a voice recording of what I'm talking about. And then that voice recording, right, is Sankhata, it's compounded, it's conditioned by the machine. And then when we listen to it, we have a feeling, oh, that was a good recording, or that was a poor recording. So our sense of this was good or this was not good is a sankhara. It's constructed. It depends on the phone, on the quality of the voice. And then if it's disappointing, if we're not careful, let's say it's a disappointing recording, we say, God, I just bought that yesterday. What a piece of rubbish. I got ripped off. I'm going back to the manufacturer. We enter into suffering, right? But all sankharas have these characteristics of dukkha. And what it's referring to is not that the phone message is, the recording is good or bad. It's just that you can't rely on it. You can't rely on it. And yet you have to. You have to have a recording or whatever. So you realize that anything which is compounded, Sankhata, has this characteristic of dukkha, and it's pointing to a question, what doesn't have the characteristic of dukkha? What isn't compounded? What isn't dependent? So that's a deep spiritual consideration, not just a consideration, I should have got an iPhone, I should have got the Android. It's not that. It's not that at all. It's something deeply. So the first teacher I had in Buddhism said, what if the Buddha had, what's the word that the Buddha would have used the most? It depends. It depends. It dependently originated. So what isn't Sankhata? What doesn't have the characteristic of dukkha? And that's when you enter into the language of And this is difficult language, again. This isn't easy. It's not like, you can't just believe in Buddhism. I think the people who don't do well in Buddhism believe in Buddhism because they don't reflect. They just take a cultural belief. The Buddha existed, this is true, the other is not true. We don't believe in God, we believe in anatta, blah, 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 blah. But that's just a bunch of Sankhata. That's just a bunch of cultural perceptions. Not that they're wrong, but they're not insight. They're just something that has been fed into our system through cultural backgrounds, which they can be very beautiful, but they won't necessarily liberate. Right? But what liberates the mind is this capacity to internalize the teaching and really consider, what could that mean? What might that mean? So in terms of sankhara, then all our experience, the snow is sankhata, our perception of snow is sankhata, our liking and disliking are sankhata, the clothing we buy, maybe the fashion of the clothing we buy, etc. That's all compounded. All our relationships, all our emotions, all our moods, all our bodily feelings, the whole 9 yards. So then Buddhists will say, well, it's all dukkha. But that's not the Buddhist teaching. What it says is that which is compounded is unsatisfactory. But it's not all dukkha. We say it's all dukkha when we're depressed. It's all dukkha. But actually, no. So what is it that is not compounded? That's the question. What is it that isn't causally related? Gender? Being male or female? Being Sri Lankan or Latvian Canadian? Being young, being old? Good meditation, bad meditation? All of that is sankhata, it's compounded. But it's not compounded. That's a question you have to ask yourself. And that question comes from the Buddha's statement, is there is the uncreated. There is the uncompounded. There is the unborn. Now that language is very, very difficult because you can't fix it, like unborn. Well, all words are born. All words are compounded. Now, though that language is synonymous with the word nibbana or nirvana, but I think nibbana is not a good word to use. It's become corrupted because what is nibbana now? You know, it's like a spa in Muskoka. Or, you know, it's like a trip to Tahiti, you know, nibbana, you know, or it might be a bar. I've seen a bar called Nibbana. And actually, when I was in New Zealand, there was the Buddhist, one bar wanted to call itself Nirvana, and the associated Buddhist groups made a protest to the Auckland Council saying, come on, you know, give us a break. And they didn't allow that name to be used, nirvana. But you can see how that word becomes just a popular word, and then people will say, I want to go to Nibbana. I mean, first of all, want to go to Nibbana? I mean, it just does not make sense at all. And people say that, don't they? Or I'm fed up with suffering. I don't want to be reborn again. I just want to go to Nibbana. Oh, yeah, okay. So popular culture corrupts the profundity of the teaching, and then it just becomes kind of commonplace. We talk like that. So I would tend to say, like, put the word Nibbana aside for a while. Don't reflect on that, but take something more, not just philosophical, more I would call existential, like about our existence, uncreated, right? So then you start to reject all things which are created, which comes to all experience, because all experience is created. It depends on causes and conditions. It depends, right? So once you realize that, you start to understand what renunciation is about. Renunciation isn't just about shaving your head and not eating too many Timbits. It's more about where you're looking for your spiritual center. It's not about asceticism. It's not about somehow keeping rules either. And renunciation is realizing that in the conditioned, you cannot find the unconditioned. In the compounded, you can never find the uncompounded. It's not a rejection of the condition. It's not a rejection of sankharas. It's just saying the sankharas are limited. They have their usefulness. You have to learn how to use them skillfully, but that's not a spiritual quality. They're not spiritual things. Emotions aren't spiritual things. They're not transcendent. So if you start to ponder that deeply, then, this is why I think I use this word preoccupation, your tendency to be preoccupied with emotional problems or body problems, you have to deal with them, yeah, but you say, well, wait a minute. Yeah, okay, I know that's all going on, but what is unconditioned? And the way you enter into that question is by using the other characteristic of anicca and anatta. So you start to observe change, to be mindful of change. But desire, what does desire do? It tries to change, right? Desire tries to change things to make them sukha vedana, to make them comfortable. Now you're letting go of desire, attachment to desire, and you're just observing how things change. And that takes you to the realization that awareness has no characteristic. It has no color. It has no sound. It has no age. It doesn't decay. Like, you might think that, my awareness wasn't so very good, but is awareness ever really different? Like, is my awareness of being sleepy different than my awareness of being awake? Awareness has no quality. So you start to see that the only thing possible where this realization of the unconditioned, it could be only somehow related to awareness itself. And then you begin to say, awareness must be the gateway. And that's why you trust in awareness. You trust in your insurance company for your car. You trust in Carol and Leela to make us lunch. And a very good lunch, right? And you trust in the heating system to keep you warm. So you have to be intelligent about the sankhara. It's not saying, I'm going to live in Nibbana, whatever that might mean. But having done all of that, is there a spiritual possibility? And what did the Buddha teach? He taught that there is the unconditioned, the uncreated, the unoriginated, peace, the island, Nibbana if you want, but maybe put that to the side. There is that possibility. If it was not that possibility, there would be no relief from the conditioned. So you have to, and that's why I say this is what renunciation means. You don't reject sankhara, but you don't try to find the unconditioned in the conditioned. So one of the ways we define ignorance is to think that in that which is anicca, you're trying to find permanence. That which is conditioned, you're trying to find the unconditioned. If you trust in awareness, what happens? What you notice then is, in the changing nature of experience, they're all dependent on each other and so on, you feel sukha vedana, dukkha vedana. But now you're sitting as awareness. And then as you experience sukha vedana, you want to keep that. As you experience dukkha vedana, you want to get rid of that. Just basic stuff. But now your project is no longer to maximize pleasure, minimize pain, although you need to do that if you're in pain and so on. The project is just to stay with change. So sukha vedana arises, and it tempts you into holding on to it. Say, no, it's just changing. Dukkha vedana arises, it's just changing. So as you abide, as witness, as I was saying, what do Buddhas know that others don't know? That which has a nature to arise has a nature to cease, is not self. As you abide in that kind of witnessing, you begin to sense, actually, there's a peaceful background. That awareness is always there. Consciousness is always there. Presence is always there. Because you no longer believe that your liberation lies in any experience, any condition. We have the word akaliko, timeless. The Dhamma is timeless. And what does that mean? Well, if you think that you have to really work hard to realize Nibbana, or to go to Nibbana, then you're bound in time. Me doing something that's accumulated, and then bingo, I get the Nibbana cake, or whatever. But does that make any sense? Because anything in time must be born, right? If it's not here and now, and I look for it in the future, then it's something that is born, but then it will die. So it cannot be in time. It cannot be a function of time. So we have the word akaliko. Now, we see that all the time, don't we? The Dhamma is akalika Dhamma. It's not a matter of time. So that then challenges desire. So you can see, you're sitting there and you're trying to get some experience. If you're trying to get some experience, then it's always going to be something that's born. And if it's born, it's going to die. So you start to say, no, it's not about the next moment, it's about now. And you give up desire again. You're letting go of desire becomes more and more profound. It's like this is not a desire. As you then sustain that inquiry, and I think you have a sense of interest in it, not just belief. What do Buddhists believe? We believe in the unconditioned. What does that mean? that doesn't really help. But you actually, what is unconditioned? You're using your reflective mind. They call this Dhamma Vijaya, the contemplation of Dhamma, not just as thought, but as actually observation of the way things are. When your mind is attracted, you let go of desire, you stay home, now is the knowing. Your mind is repelled, no, you stay home, you're not involved. And then the cessation of desire, you can see, is synonymous with the unconditioned. Because in this sense, I'm talking about tanha, not about kusala chanda. I'm talking about tanha. Tanha always draws you into the conditioned realm. And when you renounce that very need to make the conditioned realm perfect, and you witness the various desires that we have, tanhas that we have, as they cease, what's left is this deep, deep peace with no need for experience to be a certain way, no need to get rid of. Experience is still going to be pleasant and unpleasant. You're not going to get out of the sickness of the body. If you think that Nibbana is a non-sick body, good luck. It can't be. It doesn't make sense. Because the unconditioned is not about the body. It's not about emotions. It's about the silent awareness of the way things are. So, contemplate what is renunciation. I mean, it's not just a monastic thing. It's a whole shift in perception of what's important and how to practice. And then I think you start to have you understand the logic of faith and awareness of change. You see, I get it. I get why that is and you understand the Four Noble Truths better. So it's interesting, the Buddha has this profound realization, obviously, and then how does he couch the teaching? The teaching must be in line with that realization. So the Four Noble Truths are pointing to that realization. It's not just about being a happy puppy in samsara. It's much, much, much more profound than that. All right? Let's stretch your legs and just... yes, please. Yeah.
The thought beyond time, that unborn, uncreated, is the challenging for the even current world. What is the discovery, what we are seeing, what is unborn, that's what we keep on discovering. So he gave us an unchallenged, unlimited way of thinking.
Yeah, it's boundless. But you have to investigate. So the other day I said to you, first of all, awaken. Get to that point. That's what you have to keep doing. But then in that awakened silence, you can I asked you, is there a center? The sense of self. Is there a fixed center? We say, I am aware. Okay. There is awareness, there is consciousness, but is this other little bit called I? Does that actually exist? So you investigate, rather than say, no, it's anatta. That's just an opinion. But as you look at the mind, looking at the mind, you sense, well, there is awareness, but there's no it. There's no self that's aware, there's just awareness. And then the other boundlessness, you do that like, okay, and you have to be very silent for this. It's not about thinking, it's about attentive observation. And then, okay, the mind is silent, listening. So is there an edge to awareness? No. And that contemplation of awareness is not intellectual. It's like you're noticing, and then your intuition about awareness being boundless, unsupported, unstructured, limitless, all that language that we have, you say, oh, I get it. And it's not just weird religious language, because you're just sensing, look, there is no boundary. The sense of self-identity is, I'm someone here, and you are someone there. And that's true. That is the conventional way of perceiving. And your pain is not my pain, and et cetera, et cetera. But then there's another way of seeing that very sense of distance and space and personhood is in awareness. The sense of me being here and you being there is actually in awareness. And that is a difficult one, but then you begin to see, oh yeah, awareness is boundless, limitless, within which the world arises and ceases. And that's when we get that language of the world arises and ceases in consciousness, in the mind. It begins and ends. Obviously I enjoy this stuff. But that's why I signed up. So, shall we?
Yes.
Go to Nibbana? Stretch your legs and we'll sit a while. So I won't give any instruction, I'll just leave you to get enlightened. To do what you do. I think we've had lots of instruction.